I'm super excited for this opportunity to be today with Nina Mills. She is an expert when it comes to international taxation, especially for Hardin Bell International. So Nina, thank you so much for taking the time and coming today. And let's talk a little bit about this question everybody has when you own property in the US, but you are a foreign national, and it's called FIRPTA. And everybody wants to know what that means. What is it? It's a big elephant in the room when anybody wants to sell their property in the US. Everybody asks me about this. So we wanted to have you, especially today. I was told, and you are the one who knows this in and out and deals with it every single day. So fill us in about what it is.
All right, well, thank you for having me today. I'm very excited about this. I love to talk about FIRPTA. You would think I'd be tired of talking about it since that's all I do. But FIRPTA is basically an IRS regulation. Essentially, what happened is, everybody knows that the only thing that you can count on in life is death and taxes. So FIRPTA is making sure that Uncle Sam gets their part of the taxes from our foreign national sellers when they dispose of their property here in the U.S.
And let's talk a little bit about the withholding, because it was less, then a regulation made it a little bit bigger sum. It's not over the gains, it's over the total purchase price. So why don't we explain that a little bit better? That question, I get it every single day.
So basically what's happened is the FIRPTA withholding in 2016, I think it went from 10% to 15%. And it is 15% of the gross sale price. So whatever the top line on the contract is for the seller, it's going to be 15% of that is what's going to be held back. Now, the reason the IRS did this is actually pretty logical. I always joke around that it's like the first and last time the IRS was logical. But what they did is they decided to have this withholding held at closing because they realized it's a lot easier to refund someone money that they've overpaid, right, than it is to go to that person after they've sold their asset in this country and try to get them to pay what's owed, which actually kind of makes a lot of sense. If you've got your seller in Madagascar or whatever, if he sells and you have to go to him next year, what are the odds of getting it? Right. So what they do is they actually made sure that they're holding enough to cover any amount that will be due from capital gains. And the reason that's a big deal is because when foreign nationals own property in the U.S., it is always an investment property.
Right.
So a lot of our investors don't understand that if they don't rent it, it's still an investment. It's not their primary property. So just like when residents sell, they are subject to capital gains because they are investment properties. They can't have primary properties here as a non-resident seller because you can't have a primary property in a country that you're not a resident of. It makes a lot of sense. So what they did is they instituted that withholding to ensure there was enough money to cover what was actually due, and to also encourage our non-resident sellers to actually file taxes in the U.S. so they can get their money that's due back to them returned.
And that's a perfect example I wanted to ask you about. Let's say my client from South America purchased this property. It's not quite an investment, and I know it is an investment because they're not resident in here, but they call it, or we call it, vacation home. They don't want to rent it to anybody else. It's for their private enjoyment. They may use it a couple months out of the year, and so they don't make money out of this property. But as you said, capital gains, let's say that at the time of selling the property, we sell it for a profit, so they are making money. Now, let's say that because they had this assumption that it was not their investment property, they never filed taxes in this country. What happens then? And I know every case is a little bit different, but in general words.
Well, it's actually a really good question because a lot of our non-resident investors have the misconception that they must file taxes in the United States. They only have to file if they've generated income, okay? Not necessarily profit, because most of the time they're not making money. Even when they're renting, they're breaking even, or they're actually going a little bit into the red. But when we have those clients that are not actually renting the property, they're just coming over here to hang out while they go to Disney and visit the mouse and everything, they actually don't have a requirement to file U.S. taxes, so they're okay. And the reason they don't have that is because they aren't making money. But the year that they sell their property, they will have to file a U.S. tax return for that one single year, because selling that investment did generate income for them in the United States.
That's super simple, and I'm glad you're telling me because this is a very good question. Now, if somebody owns the property under an LLC, what happens with this withholding from the IRS?
So it really depends on what kind of LLC they have. When our foreign national investors come over, they've basically got three options for when they form an LLC. They can form it as a sole proprietorship, meaning there's one owner, right? They can form it as a partnership, pretty self explanatory, or they can form it as a C Corp. When they form it as a sole proprietorship, what I always tell my clients is that's just like they put a sweater on. They're kind of just protecting their investment from the weather, from accidents, from things like that. But from a tax perspective, it doesn't really do anything. It's just hanging with everything else in their closet. So they're going to report tax returns in their personal names, okay? We already know that foreign sellers, individuals, are subject to FIRPTA. So even if they have an LLC, if it's a sole proprietorship, they will still be subject to FIRPTA withholding. If they formed it in the partnership or the C Corp, I always say they built a closet around it, so they formed a whole other entity. That entity offers them not only a legal shelter, but a tax shelter. And then that makes them not subject to FIRPTA when they go to sell the property. They're still subject to capital gains, but they don't have that FIRPTA withholding at closing.
Excellent. And what about this great question that I get a lot as well is, now I have capital gains. So then you are doing one more tax return that final year just based on the gains you had, and that's not with a withholding. It's your obligation to just do it that final year, correct? The year of the sale? Excellent. Okay, Nina, so everybody wants to know about timing because we know it has been a little bit of a change through COVID. COVID has affected us all in so many different ways. So tell us a little bit about how this process has been affected through COVID.
So basically what happens with the FIRPTA withholding is our clients typically have two choices as to how it's handled for them, okay? The first way it's handled is that they just send the 15% to the IRS at closing. If they do that, it just sits there till they file their tax return for the year in which they sold, and then they file their return, they get their refund, they move on about their day, right? So how long that takes really depends on when they sell in the year. So if they sell today, for instance, we can turn around at the end of January, beginning of February, and file their 2022 tax return, apply for their refund, and they'll probably have that back in around May or June of the following year. The other option they have is to not send the 15% to the IRS. If they don't send it in, that means that the title company or another authorized agent has to hold that money. If they hold that money, we're asking the IRS to look at their situation and issue something called a withholding certificate. Now, used to be my favorite thing to tell clients to do because I would always get their money back faster. But once COVID hit, the time frames become longer and longer. So before COVID, we were getting them back in about 100 days, which is pretty good, right? That's not too long. Right. So even if they sold today, they could conceivably have everything released before we could even file their tax return. Unfortunately, with COVID, right now, the IRS is basically processing October of 2021 applications.
We're a year behind.
Minimum. I would say about 13 months. Now, that may change going into next year because I think what's happened is I think a lot of accountants, ourselves included, finally wised up to what was going on. And we've started encouraging our clients to send the money in. And the reason, of course, is the return time. So I think what we're going to see with the IRS is I think the time frame is going to start kind of getting smaller again. Maybe not 100 days, but I think they're going to have less applications to check. But right this second, if I advised you, I would tell you a year. Yeah.
Excellent. And there's something called 1031 exchange for Americans, where if you sell an investment property and you buy an investment property within the 90 days and you don't touch that money, you save yourself from paying capital gains in one property if you pass it all fully to the next investment property. How does apply to international investors?
So 1031 exchange is a fantastic investment vehicle. I mean, especially right now because everybody's making money, right? This is the prime time to use the 1031 exchange because, like you said, that defers their capital gain tax. So essentially what happens for a foreign national, a non-resident seller, they have the ability to utilize that 1031 just like a resident. The difference is that they also have to abide by the rules of FIRPTA. So they don't just get that 1031 exchange. So what happens with them is at closing, like the 1031 exchange for residents, title's going to hold their money and send it to a qualified intermediary, right, for reinvestment.
Yes.
Problem is that our foreign nationals still have to have that 15% withheld, which means they're already short funds for reinvestment, right? Because one of the rules is they have to reinvest 100%
Correct.
of their proceeds.
True.
So before COVID, that wasn't really a big deal because you have 180 days from the day you sell property one till you close on property two.
True.
So we were able to send the application to the IRS, ask them to review it, document, issue what they need to issue, and the money could be released to the qualified intermediary for reinvestment. Now it's taking a year to get that.
Right.
So obviously a year is a lot longer than 180 days.
True.
So what we're telling our clients now is that you can still take advantage of the 1031 exchange, but you must be prepared to pull that 15% out of your personal pocket
Okay.
for the reinvestment phase. Because what's going to happen is they're going to take that 15%, out of their savings account or whatever. They're going to give it to that qualified intermediary. They're going to reinvest, get the full benefit of the 1031 exchange. And then when the IRS finishes processing, the IRS is going to come back and tell title, hey, you can release that to them anyway, and they're going to reimburse themselves. So it's a little more complicated than it used to be, but it's still very doable and very viable for us.
Excellent. So there's a little bit trick to it that you have been able to find to still help them with that fantastic tax benefit. And okay, very good question. So the next one is, everybody's scared about that 15%. And everybody says, I send it to the IRS, I'm never going to see it back. How could you, obviously, you as a professional, evaluate what is it that is going to be fully withheld or what is it that is going to be refunded to them after the next year?
So first thing, I hear that all the time too. What I always tell them is, number one, make sure you're dealing with an accountant who's experienced in dealing with non-residents. Just because an accountant does tax returns does not mean they know how to file one for a non-resident. If you don't have someone who knows what they're doing, you may not get your money back because they don't know what they're doing, kind of thing. Right. But as long as you use an experienced accountant and you provide all the documentation that you're supposed to provide and turn it to the IRS, you are going to get what's due back to you. Capital gains calculation for a non-resident is exactly the same as it is for a U.S. resident. So if they want to kind of have a quick idea of what they're going to have, they're going to basically look at their sale price. They're going to take out most of their closing costs, take off their purchase price. There's some assets and things, and it's going to bring them down to their gain or loss. And we can kind of give them a ballpark area of what it's going to be, assuming that there are no other outliers in their financial portfolio, of course, that comes into play on their tax return. So I feel like most of our clients do have an idea going in. If we're filing for the withholding certificate, they're going to have a pretty good idea, and it's actually going to be a high estimate. So whatever we guess on that is probably actually going to be better for them in the long run, because the IRS is still going to ask for more than what they're actually due. But as long as they keep their records, submit everything they're supposed to, they're going to get their refund back that's due to them.
Let's say, Nina, we have somebody watching today that has never invested in the US, is from another country, and is ready to make that first-time investment. If you could groom that perfect client of yours, what is it that you would ask or recommend that they do from day one, that they know they're going to buy a property in the US?
Well, first, they probably should call you so you can find their perfect property for them. And then ideally, they're going to meet with the people they're going to need to help them facilitate a good investment on this side. So that means they're going to want to find a bank that's experienced with non-residents, because not every bank is equal. They're going to want to meet with an accountant, obviously like Harding & Bell, that specializes in non-resident investments. They're going to want to find a realtor, like I said, like yourself, to help them find the right property. And they're going to want to do their homework, because they need to be sure they want to invest here, and they need to fully understand what owning here really means. So I think the accountant piece is really important, because we do have a lot of taxes here. We have federal, sometimes there's state. I mean, not in Florida, but other places there's state. Sometimes there could be local, county, what have you. And I think a lot of times our realtors are afraid to disclose that, thinking they're not going to buy then. But I feel like if they actually know what they're getting into, they're more likely to buy, and also more likely to recommend you to their friends, because you've done them a real service. One of the things I tell buyers is that they need to remember that they're prepping for their sale date. As soon as they buy their house, truthfully, before they ever even set foot in it, they're already prepping for when they sell it. So if they meet with that accountant from the beginning, they're already going to know what kind of receipts they need to save, what kind of taxes have to be paid, what kind of things have to do. So I think all of those are key when they're deciding to invest here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nina. And I agree with you. I think knowledge is power, and for them to know all the taxes that we do have to pay, and at the same time, all the deductions that we can do, and sometimes they even comes in the negative at the end of the year because they were able to save from their travel and from their expenses of coming and visiting on the property and checking on the property. And that all actually is going to help them at the very end, the day that they're selling their property. If we could show that some years they actually didn't make money, that's another on their favor when they come to that final withholding, correct?
Absolutely, because a lot of times our clients are like, oh, but I didn't make any money this year. And I'm like, that's true, but you spent money. And if you don't file that income tax return here in the US to show what you did, the US is not going to recognize that when you get ready to sell. So you're going to have all this money you've paid out, but you've never recorded it here. And the US is going to be like, so what? So it's really, really, really important that they know what to file, when to file, what they can use, what they can't, because they want to be able to maximize those deductions to minimize their capital gains when they get ready to sell the property.
Nina, so I wanted to ask you, what is the one thing you see happening over and over again? And if me as a realtor or anybody else out there can avoid it or can, lead people in the right direction, what is it that you think is stuff that is very important that we grasp early on?
So I think one of the big things that gets lost in the whole picture is getting a tax ID for our non-resident investors, okay? Because a lot of them don't realize that they have to get what we call an ITIN. It's an individual taxpayer identification number. And sometimes that scares them because they think if they get this tax number, that means they have to file taxes in the US, right? Which is not exactly how that works. Again, they only have to file taxes if they are actually generating income. And if they generate income, they're going to file that tax return. They're going to need that tax ID. Well, getting the tax ID is not quite as easy as it used to be, number one. Because it used to be you could get a notarized signature pretty much, any street corner, and somebody would give you a tax number. Well, U.S. finally wised up that was partly the reason why we're having so much fraud. So I think around 2017, they kind of made the guidelines for getting these tax numbers a little bit stricter. So what we typically are advising our investors is that if you're here looking, even if you don't decide to invest on this trip, but you think you're going to, go ahead and come into our office at Harding Bell. Let us go ahead and certify your passports because that's one of the requirements to get an ITIN. You have to have a passport certified, or you have to go to like the US Embassy in your home country, or there's all kinds of things that you have to do. But if you're here, you can bring your passport into our office. We've got contracts with the IRS that will let us certify your passports while you're here, and you walk out with your passport. If you go back home, and they call you back and say, Maria, I love that house you found for me. Let's buy it. And now you're like, okay, we need a tax number. Well, then they either have to come back, which may or may not be feasible, or they may have to go to the U.S. Embassy, which sounds pretty easy, right? But like in the UK, for instance, the U.S. Embassy is only taking walk-ins, I think, one day a month. So that's kind of crazy. And it's only in London. If you've got our Brazilian clients or South American clients, a lot of times the police department is the one that issues passports and things like that. So that's where they'd have to go for certification. How many of our South American clients want to go to the police and say, hey, can you certify this so I can buy a house in the U.S.? Probably not too many. And if they don't want to do that, then they would have to actually put their passport in like a FedEx envelope and mail it to us, which we get a lot of, but if they're already here, it's a lot easier. So just knowing that they're here or kind of coordinating when they're coming to visit and do whatever is the easiest way to do that. And that's probably the biggest hassle because everything else can be done pretty much through email.
Correct. So I have some clients who says, well, I don't want to open the LLC this year because I'm thinking I'm purchasing the house next year. So ideally, and to make your life easier, what would be the steps to follow from the moment I have the client who is looking and who is thinking very seriously about purchasing the property till when it gets to your hands?
Do you mean in terms of when they should form the LLC or?
Correct. So if somebody says, well, we want to wait because they need to have the LLC before they could have the IN number, correct?
They do have to form the LLC first. They can form the LLC and they can get the EIN without there being anything linked to that LLC, if that makes sense. So if they want to form it now, but they're not going to buy till next year, they should still be okay to do that because they're here meeting with the accountant. Maybe they're not actually going to close till next year. Maybe it's a new build, whatever. They'll be fine if they wait.
So let's say we build the LLC in June and we don't purchase anything. Do we have to file taxes for 2022?
I don't believe so. If there's no income associated with the LLC, they should not have to file. But as soon as there is, they will have to file.
Okay, so then if we buy it the following year, we should be fine. Excellent. You see, that's something that we are learning here today about how complicated things can be if they are not done while they are here in the US.
Yes.
Excellent. Nina, I'm so excited that I met with you. It's such a controversial even sometimes talking about taxes. People don't want to talk about it, withholdings and things. And as you said, it may be a little bit scary, but I want to tell everyone about it. And I want everybody to know, what it takes to own property and especially to sell property and what would be the smart way to do it all the way. So when that time comes and they're selling hopefully at a profit, they have done their homework through the years and they know exactly how it works. And it really takes somebody professional like you to take the time. You do it in and out every single day of your life. And that's what I love talking with you today, because if it's a question, you'll have the answers. So that's really what we need to talk with specific people and then do this day in and out. So that's fantastic. So thank you so much for coming today and having this time with me.
Well, thank you for having me.